Hi, I'm Phil Turk, and I need to vent right now. I have watched this morning a reel put out on Instagram by Ted Stormer, Stoermer. He is a public historian, he's an author, and he put out a 10-minute reel. I feel like just telling you to go watch him if you're on Instagram, but I'm going to try to summarize or restate what he said and maybe compress it to 9 minutes. So basically, he's describing how there have been two republics representing the United States of America. The first republic was really ruled by minority, and the minority were always white Protestant men. And they baked it into our founding constitution that it doesn't matter if you're a freed slave or an enslaved person. If you're black, you will never be a citizen of the United States, period. There's no such thing as a freed slave who gets to become a citizen. Women were not allowed to vote, as some of you might remember from reading history about the Constitution. Indigenous people, nope, they had no citizenship rights whatsoever. Great. Then the Civil War came along, where people in the North knew they had to do something, or else this was going to be permanent forever. There was even an amendment uh, proposed just before Lincoln took office that said Congress will never be able to change uh, the Constitution with regard to slavery and rule by minority, meaning rule by white Protestant men, period. But Civil War interrupted that, and at the end of the Civil War, the radical Republicans seized an opportunity, and they had to make an opportunity to be more correct about it. So they were about to readmit all the Southern representatives. Instead, the radical Republicans ignored them, standing right there, waiting to be admitted to the roll. And they said, we need to put together a committee first. That delayed the readmission of the South long enough for the 14th and 15th Amendments to be passed. And that is the Second Republic, the one that you and I are most familiar with, one. The ones where we believe that you have birthright citizenship. Ah, something that's on the Supreme Court tomorrow, I believe. So in the Second Republic, it was a big improvement over the First Republic as far as majority rule goes, but it still had some holes in it. So, for example, let's see, Wong Kim Ark in 1898, the Supreme Court decision said, yes, he actually is a US citizen. He was born here of Chinese immigrants. But for years, the Chinese race was considered to be excluded from ever being able to have citizenship in the United States. Wow. Even though his name is on the Supreme Court decision, he was arrested in Texas. The government tried to deport him. This is 3 years after the Supreme Court was forced to concede that, yes, he's a citizen. And he tried for years to bring his kids over here. He eventually gave up. He moved to China. On his forms, he said he's intending to return, but he never did. So, and as for indigenous people, wow. So they weren't even eligible to become citizens until 1924. That's 100 years from Trump's second reelection victory. And it wasn't until 1962 that the state of New Mexico finally gave indigenous people the right to vote, because each state gets to determine that. Wow. So everything that's going on today, you can view it as the First Republic was all about white minority rule permanently. White minority men rule permanently. And the Second Republic is the one that we actually think of, uh, actually implemented what we think of when we think about our founding fathers. Our founding fathers were slaveholders, and they weren't really all about freedom for all. They were about just modifying a British system with its parliament, and they built into our original constitution everything to prevent the tyranny of the mob. of the majority. That's what they called it. No, there is no. They made that up. We have been functioning well since the Civil War. Our life expectancy has gone up. We respect science. We respect nature. Things have been improving steadily because of the Civil War. 750,000 casualties so that we have a second republic. But now we've got a demagogue as president. And while he's just reading the wind about what people want to hear and responding to it, behind him, all the machinery is being implemented. That which is called Project 2025. And, consider all your favorite heroes there. Steve Bannon, Steve Miller, wow, the double Steves. Their apparent intent is to restore the First Republic. And an earlier reel, I mentioned that even the Bill of Rights would go away, and someone commented on that. Oh, they won't take away our guns. Well, truthfully speaking, the Second Amendment was never intended to be applied individually. That was Ronald Reagan's reinterpretation on his own. If you look at Attorney General Bork, he pointed that out, that said, no, the Second Amendment was all about states having the right to make regular militias on their own, not individuals' right to own weapons of mass destruction, basically, military-grade hardware. So even the Second Amendment is going to go away. Why would they need people to own their own weapons anymore if they have the entire United States military at their disposal now? And I'm talking about minority rule. Right now, the Insurrection Act of 1807 gives the United States president unquestioned authority to use military force on U.S. citizens on a whim. He doesn't have to justify the use to anyone, not to the vice president, not to Congress, not to a federal judge. Before 1807, you had to at least get the consent of a federal judge. That's been eliminated. So I'm a little fed up because I'm running for Congress. From my point of view, my hypothesis is gerrymandering leads to so much frustration that we now have 14,000 credible threats of violence against members of Congress every year. Well, if we restore, taxation with representation, I predict the number of threats will go down and we will be, less of political zombies. But I'm against tyranny, so I'm against pretty much everything that's been going on lately. I oppose the idea of blowing up boats claiming that they're running drugs. What evidence I've seen is that Venezuela, the reason we're blowing up boats is to put pressure on Venezuela to give us their access to their oil. That was the very first thing the Trump administration tried to do on this second term. They didn't go over to Venezuela with State Department and say, hey, we need you to do something about drugs. No, they went over there and said, hey, we want access to your oil. The drug trade was coming out of Colombia, not Venezuela. Venezuela, if anything, was shipping stuff off to Europe. Oh, they didn't tell you that. You need to kind of look into it. And then there's stuff like Walmart. Great. What is Walmart doing? Here's an example of how it's not really white Protestant men who are seizing power now in our government. It's really wealthy white Protestant men who are seizing power in government. I'm going to use Walmart as an example. I couldn't get the exact numbers, but it's something like, I should look it up again, but $15.5 billion in net profit for Walmart for 2024. And then something like 40% of their employees are working full time and yet qualify for food stamps and Medicaid because they're below the poverty level. And U.S. taxpayers, therefore, paid $6.2 billion or so in supporting SNAP benefits and Medicaid for those Walmart employees. The effective tax rate for Walmart is something like 21.5% now because of the big, beautiful bill that just lowered it even more from what it had been. I calculated that if we raised the corporate tax rate on Walmart to 26%, keeping in mind that in 1978 it was at 48%, if we just put it back up to 26%, we would collect enough tax money from Walmart to fund the bill that we're currently paying as taxpayers for SNAP and Medicaid benefits for Walmart employees. So if you want to know what my platform is, how about this? If you have an employee-owned company and the employees are all earning above the poverty level, then that company should enjoy a lower tax rate. Let's say we go as low as 21.5%, the new improved tax rate from the Trump administration. But if you're a company like Walmart and you're not even carrying the cost of your own employees staying above the poverty level, then you pay a higher tax rate to cover that cost. Same for Amazon. Jeff Bezos' worth is something like $239.1 billion last time I checked. And something like 40% of his employees are SNAP and Medicaid recipients. Tax him more. His effective tax rate was something like 1.1% on him personally. I don't know what it was for Amazon. These are changes that we need to make. I can't do it by myself. If I become a member of Congress, what am I going to do? It's on we the people. We need a new structure. We need maybe a third republic. I don't know if it's going to be republic. Maybe because of 21st communications technology, it should be more like a democracy and less like a republic. The way I want to ban gerrymandering isn't based on me getting into Congress. It's based on us agreeing that, yeah, we are actually a bipartisan nation, and three of us can form a little visit to our local representative and say, we are bipartisan. We want you to ban gerrymandering nationwide. And then just repeat that. Many groups of three across the country visiting the representatives, building a coalition, linking to each other with social media, anchoring these chains, I call them, with people that we respect and trust. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Representative AOC, myself on this first one, but you have to get involved too. You have to pick one topic that you care about passionately enough that you're going to stick with it for 3 years, 6 years maybe, to get it passed. Now, there's not a lot of active time involved with this, but you got to do something, because right now, the Second Republic ended on October 1st. When the government shut down, that was effectively the end of the Second Republic. And what's emerging from it right now is something that most of us really don't want. We don't want something that's like the First Republic, but really controlled by the wealthy. This upward flow of wealth is not good for us. Now, before all the government data disappears, on whatever topic you pick to be the one passionate reform that you want to do, you need to scurry around and find somewhat reliable sources of information from government websites about what works. For example, medium-sized farms work better than huge industrial-sized farms for supporting local economies. Medium-sized businesses, okay, Walmart came in and wiped out all of its competition with low prices, and then they raised the prices a bit. And by the way, back to Walmart, something like 24% of all SNAP expenditures by people who are on SNAP, they spend it at Walmart because that's the cheapest place to spend it. Now think about it again. Who's paying for SNAP? U.S. taxpayers. Where do they spend that money? Walmart. Why do they have to spend it? Why do they need to spend it? Because they work for Walmart. Okay, see that loop? That's what's happening. I don't like it. Immigration reform. Wow. Right now, the Trump administration is wiping out immigration judges left and right. Anyone who isn't just going along with what the administration wants to do. If you are favoring an immigrant instead of just booting them out of the country, you've lost your job. Something like 1/7 of all immigration judges in the United States are now out the door. Why? Because they're not protected by Congress. They're not protected by the judiciary branch. They are under the executive branch. And so at the whim of the president, boop, they're gone. Racial history is being erased. If you go to Europe right now, there are two plaques, I think it was in the state of country of Denmark, that were commemorating the black soldiers who gave their lives during World War II in that village area. They've been removed. Oh, we're redoing the plaques. But that's the Trump administration this summer has taken them away. All these changes going on. And you're sitting around watching cat videos on TikTok? No, we can't do that. This is going to be a long process to straighten things out. And we need to actually be talking about what does straightening it out mean. It can't be to just go back to the Second Republic. That failed. That put us here. There. Sorry, I had to vent. Mm. Closing statement is civic engagement unites us. See you.